Okay, so we thought that what would flow quite nicely from the other workshops we've been doing was to kind of have a look a little bit more around daily habits. So we've done like a morning routine, we've done an evening routine, we've done managing overwhelm, and we just kind of thought this flowed quite nicely as a topic, seeing as nothing had been kind of put forward as a request for this week. And so we wanted to look at how could we be our most productive and effective while still enjoying our life. She thought was kind of a balance in an approach, maybe for some. And we've kind of broken it down. I'm like, God, we've broken it down into 6 sections, which is like, it feels like quite a lot to get through. But the first one to think about, we felt, was to look at what is your most productive time of day, so that you can kind of plan your day around what your energy is like and when you can really be productive and effective. And just in terms of research that's out there, which you may or may not know, is that in the morning is when you're your most logical and focused. So it's the time to do all of those rational thinking tasks and the really hard stuff generally. So kind of, that's the time when you sit down and you do the headphones, no one talk to me, don't check your emails, just sit down and nail it. And that's kind of part of that, just getting on with what you need to do. And that you should then look to have a proper break between 11 and 1, depending on your kind of rhythm as to hunger and stuff like that. So some people can make it through to 1 o'clock, some people need the 11s to get them through. And we wanted to leave that open. But one of the important things about when you need and feel that time for that proper break is that you really want to get up and move. So one of the most important things is that movement to help reset and clear the mind from that intense focus in the morning. And then what often happens in our second cycle of the day, which normally for most people is in the afternoon when we may feel a bit sleepy, is actually creativity. So, and especially when it comes to collaboration and communicating with other people. So it's a really good time to do meetings and do kind of problem solving in a team. Or, if you're doing something that involves creating something with other people, that's a really good time to kind of sit and do your brainstorming and your designing together. And kind of really getting that stuff out. So that's the general advice in terms of like most people's flow of productivity. And obviously that doesn't take into account that some people really are now night owls, but possibly a night owl will still go through the same flow. It's just that the hours may be slightly different. But I mean, we also wanted to recognize that we all have to know whether or not that does apply for us. And whether or not, you are someone who needs to be creative kind of earlier in the day because you wake up kind of a fresh blank canvas and you need to like express and work through your creativity in order to get to rational problem stuff. Maybe you don't even need to do that much rational problem stuff in your life. So, you can bring that creativity earlier into your day. So also just allowing for how creative a person you are and how much of a rational thinking person you are as to what you need to do. But most of us at some level, especially when we're self-employed, which you are generally, is that need to manage the business side, which is that logical side, and our creative side, which is where we're creating our business and whatever it is that we're bringing to life, and allowing yourself time to be those best things. And have you done much work in terms of getting your rhythm for when you're most productive?
It's interesting because my freelance situation varies so much. When I'm working directly for an agency, then my schedule is very much their schedule. So it's kind of I'm giving them my time and I'm creating my work within the day that they're working. So it's very much kind of office hours type thing. And I generally find that throughout most of my life, I've been very much a morning person. I always feel clearer, fresher, brighter, all of that stuff, and focused in the morning. And that works quite well for me. On the days where I'm not working directly for a client and I'm having to generate my own schedule, I've sort of tried to come up with a new schedule during lockdown because I've had a lot less work. and my priority has really been using the mornings for exercise, because that's when my body's really needing it more, whether it's kind of waking up from a sluggishness with my joints, or whether it's I'm not having much pain that day and I can go straight into a workout and I feel like I can do a bit more strength work. But I know that if I get it done in the morning, then it's that mentally it sets me up so much better for the rest of the day. However, the tricky thing with that is once that's done, and it's breakfast and everything is done after that, I do suddenly feel quite tired. So it's I think it's this weird thing where I'm just noticing as I'm going through like different phases of my life that my body's needing, the rhythms are quite different to what it would have been like 5 years ago. So I know I need to get my movement morning in order for me to mentally feel clear and feel as though I'm kind of making that commitment to my body that I need. But I know that the repercussions are that I tend to be a bit sluggish earlier in the day. It's a bit weird.
Could you be overexerting yourself in the exercise that you're doing? Could you be pushing yourself more than your energy really is there for?
I think I was. I think I've done less so this week. This week I've given myself a lot more rest than I did previously, and I do feel better for it. But yeah, generally speaking, when it comes to sort of focus work, definitely the morning is better. And in the afternoon, between sort of 2 and 4, I do struggle a lot more.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said for the recommendation for exercise in the morning, and often it's a very kind of yang style, high energy exercise that's recommended in the morning. But similar to you, I found that when I tried to exercise in the morning, I would eat about 3 times more during the day. So I actually ended up starting putting on weight, and it really affected my ability to keep that focus in the morning. And especially like when I was a lawyer, I used to run a 6-mile run every morning to work, and I really noticed the difference by doing that. Really affected my my eating, but also my concentration. Like I'm really good and focused from 7 a.m. and I just have to like nail in and work often. And actually I'm better at doing something gentle in the morning, and then if I've got excess energy, having a second workout in the afternoon that kind of helps me alleviate some of that excess energy. That's and it's working out that like, because my brain is good in the morning, I kind of have to allow my brain to be on fire and not use up all that energy by doing exercise. So I think that's the kind of nuances. I think that sometimes the key kind of advice of the generic what works, you have to kind of recognize your rhythm is maybe something that needs to be a bit more moderate.
I think one of the things that we've adjusted with now is because we've got the dog walking in the morning. Tom walks the dog. In the time he's walking the dog, I get my exercise done. Then he's back. We both have breakfast. And then by that time, it's a case of, and it might even be sort of 11 by then, because it's just how it goes. And then we just feel ready to work. So usually from about sort of midday till 5, I try and give myself that time where I know, well, that's when I'll be getting stuff done. And it may be that it's not ever going to be a solid 5 hours, but I see that as my sort of productive window where I can sit down at my laptop, or I can do my sort of 2 or 3 tasks that I want to get done that day in that chunk of time. So that seems to be working. And then after that, it's kind of winding down for the evening, or preparing dinner, or evening dog walk, or whatever that might be. So there is that sort of, my chance to get out of the house is in the evening dog walk. So I probably should leave the house earlier in the day than that. But then this is the thing, it's like I'm managing to get the exercise done, and I'm so pleased I'm getting the exercise done, but often it means I don't get out of the house. I just don't leave, because then I'm just on it for the next thing. But I think that, to be honest, I'm kind of, one of my things for June is to try and wake up earlier, and then just get some fresh air and then start doing stuff, because I've really struggled lately waking up early, and I've just let my body sleep if it needs to sleep. I've tried not to fight it, but I'm going to try and get up earlier and see what that does.
I think that's a really good point, actually, Raj, because if you do get outside in the fresh air, you're more likely to get invigorated, and you don't necessarily need quite as big a dose of exercise, or maybe not quite so full-on exercise, to get a good energizing effect that lasts you through the day, at least until the second dog walk anyway, till the evening. And also, I think it's also worth realizing or understanding that our energy can be channeled into creativity, or it can be channeled into exercise or emotional stuff. But if you're really sort of, you've basically got two routes, and you've got to balance. We've sort of touched on it, but to really hone in on, okay, today I really want to get something creative done, or I've got this creative energy in me, so I'll do my exercise, but I'll make it shorter or gentler so that I can then channel that energy. So for example, for me, I sort of go in waves, where it'll be maybe a few days or a week or a couple of weeks where I'll just want to nail the exercise in the morning, and I'll do really hard exercise. And then other days or weeks when I'll just feel really inspired to do something creative, and I'll get up and straight away I'll just be working. And I'll just let off steam later in the day as I need it, as need does. But understanding that there's those rhythms that come and go. And also I think coming into June, for you it's summer, so it'll be great to get up earlier, because it's theoretically you don't need as much sleep. I certainly don't. It's not necessarily a given, but it's a good time to try it and find out if you...
And I've naturally always loved being an early riser. And, I think genetically it is where I'm able to do it. It's just, for some reason, I think the whole kind of quarantine lockdown thing, all of that anxiety in my body was really like, right, you just need to sleep.
You probably needed it. You probably really needed it for now, but coming out of the isolation thing, this might be a good time, coming into summer with more light around, warmth around.
Totally.
Time to get back into that.
And that kind of goes into that kind of the cycles and the rhythms that we have to acknowledge, is that, there's the external cycles and rhythms that are going on around us that affect us, like, like being in quarantine and having to kind of learn to, that anxiety is very exhausting, and we probably have all needed more sleep. And maybe for some people, they have to physically move it through their body, and so they do need to exercise more. Like some people need to sleep it off and some people need to move it off. And it's just, knowing that your body needs rest in order to process something that's quite emotionally demanding, and not being too harsh on yourself, and recognizing that's the current rhythm. But also, there's the rhythms that we go through in life and the stages of our life, and then there's also the rhythms overall of just what's our kind of underlying constitution. And getting that sense of like, when are you mentally clearest? When does your body feel at its like most energized? And as Adele's saying, like, and what I was hinting at as well is that, getting a sense when you get up in the morning and using that morning routine to say, this is where my energy is at, this is where my mindset is at, and this is how my body feels. And according to those three things, I'm going to decide like how much energy I'm going to put into my movement this morning, or if I need to spend a bit more time on my mindset and cultivating the mindset for the work that I want to have. And using those tools to kind of help you then decide that, how you need to tweak your rhythm for the day, so that we don't get stuck in a set routine, but we use routine to help discipline us when sometimes we're procrastinating or avoiding something, and that's a rhythm that's kicked in, right? Like, 'cause we can have rhythms of procrastination and avoidance, and at what point do we need to say to ourselves, no, I need to go back to a really strict routine of getting up at 6 and like going for a walk, and then I do some movement, and then I sit and I work, and like being like, I have to do this to move myself forward. And when you can say to yourself, you know what, like, that's just not very compassionate, I really need to like lie in bed and have that extra half hour of cuddling, and then and then I'll just cuddle the dog rather than go for a walk, and that's okay. And allow yourself those natural rhythms to flow through. And how you manage that with Tom, and with the demands of a dog is also the other kind of thing that we always have to kind of borrow a bit sometimes, as to how much sleep you get.
And I have to say, in terms of rhythms, one of the things I've been trying to be really much more aware of is the monthly rhythm as well, because I'm kind of trying to be really much, I'm kind of aware now which phase of my cycle I'm in. And like right now, I'm in that phase of my cycle where I do feel quite energized, and I feel quite kind of, I've got a bit more sort of capacity for stuff, and I'm not so sluggish, and like the hormones are in the happy place. But then when it comes to sort of the end of that cycle and leading up towards my period, I tend to just be much more aware of the fact that that's also going on, and I give myself a little bit of a break, and I tend to ease up there. And I find that that's really helping me, because it's stopping me from getting being hard on myself. It's helping with the compassionate bit. It's like, okay, this is the time of the month it's okay for me to be a bit more compassionate. And actually, you know what, this is the time of the month I know if I just kind of put in the effort, I'm going to feel better for it. Like, get off your ass and just do it, you know, because I have got the capacity right now. And if I'm not, I'm just being avoidance, lazy, whatever. Like, so it kind of helps for me to think about it in that kind of way.
Yeah.
And also I noticed that my arthritis is really affected by my hormonal fluctuations as well. So it's quite
It's
useful.
rheumatoid, isn't it? That you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would affect the inflammation. Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of helps in that respect as well, for me to just know when to ease off a little bit and when to sort of put a bit more power in.
Yeah. And I think, and it's also, you know, when we know what our rhythm is and we know kind of what those cycles are that we've got to work with, it's also knowing what to prioritize. Like, you know, we sometimes, even if we're in a I mean, I think all three of us are quite lucky in that we kind of all run our own shows, so we can all to an extent pick and choose whether or not we want to get stuff done, but then we also all have to show up as well to some degree. And so you know, we do have to prioritize within you know, our compassion, and when we're feeling really achievey, as to, you know, if I'm feeling super achieving, okay, cool, I can maybe set more things to do in a day that I could try and achieve, or harder things that I wouldn't normally choose to achieve. And then sometimes it's like, you just have to do it. So, you know, you're going to have to deprioritize something else you might like to do with that sense of compassion in order to, you know, give a client what they're asking for.
Yeah.
And some of the things that they say, definitely in terms of prioritizing, is trying not to look at emails until after you've done like that first stint of focus. So not looking at your phone, not getting into messages. And I mean, for me, I always find the morning is so tempting because there's a gazillion messages from everyone in Europe. And my, you know, my dad and my sister talking overnight in America, and it's like I wake up and there's like this just big, and that's why I turned off the notifications on my phone, because I'm just like, you know, like, I'm like, you can message me in this one way is the only way to get hold of me if it's a priority. Other than that, like, I don't want to know, because I want to be able to have that quiet time so I can get on and get my mindset for the day, get the work done that needs to get done. So at least by the time I start getting sidetracked, I'm like, I've achieved the key priority for the day. And I mean, neuro-occupational therapists say that, you know, you should never really look to do more than 5 things in a day and be pleased if you do one on that list of 5 things. Like, that's the professionals' advice about how we should look after our brains, right? And it really works. Like, people who get caught in really long tasks lists in corporate jobs, especially, like, they really struggle with the concept of 5 things a day. They just sit and complain about how, you know, like, oh, everyone sidetracks me, and they're always, you know, everyone's always chatting, and people ask me to do things, and then I don't get my thing done. It's just like, if you learn that 5 max is like, that would be an amazing day. And if you get one of the things done, be really, really proud of yourself. And if we apply that as self-employed people, I think it also gives us that sense of going with those cycles.
But this is an interesting thing when you're self-employed and if you're working from home as well, because the task list is quite a different thing. And Tom and I we've gotten into a sort of a practice where we're trying to also avoid that overwhelm by having our sort of, this is what we're doing in the day, and that's fine. I tend to do like a beginning of the week brain dump, and then sort of try and put that into the days and keep it quite succinct. But there's always that like list of stuff to do around the house versus business stuff, you know. And so are we talking 5 things only business related, or 5 things including this,
everything?
You know what I mean?
It's supposed to be everything. When you're it's supposed to be everything. So which I found really difficult. Like, when I was first told to do this, I was like, ha ha ha, and they were so strict with me, and, you know, it took me quite a while to really understand what they were trying to say. And, you know, like, I can totally see it now. If I put in 5 appointments in my diary, like, my day is screwed, because I just can't do anything else. Like, that's the end of me. And then when people start saying, oh, you know, like, oh, can you have a call then on that day, I'm just like, I know I have to say no, because once there's 5 booked in, that's just, you know, nothing else is going to happen in the day. Like, that's just 5 calls. That's already ruined me. And then I'm like, and then I can't make dinner.
How do you manage things like, say, for example, you know, I tried to do during quarantine, I tried to do a thing whereby I'll get my evening meal cooked in the morning, so it will just get out of the way, because then I haven't got any of that house stuff to do, like stick the washing on, cook the evening meal, done my workout, have breakfast. I'm trying to do this thing where I'm only in the kitchen once, preparing whatever.
Totally. So totally. Like, I'm also big believer in the, like, you know, the Sunday cooking binge that people do. If you go to the office, like, do the big cooking binge for the whole week, freeze stuff, stuck it, you know, put it in the fridge, like have as much prepared as you can. And I still do that. It's just, it might be, like you said, I might do it in a morning or something, or I'll do a load of work in the morning, and then my lunch break would be cooking up like 3 dishes all in one go. Like, it'll be like oven hobs are all off. I'll just like make a big pile of food, and then I'm like, oh cool, now I don't need to think about it. And then I can just be like, you know, Russell comes home and I'm like, it's there, just go pick it up and stick it on. You know, and it's like, he doesn't have to think about it, I don't have to think about it, but I've done it all as like one task, rather than every day a meal being a task. It's like trying to, you know, make it 2 or 3 meals out of one dish. It's that classic kind of managing our time and prioritizing having healthy food, but maybe not always having the time to spend 3 hours cooking some amazing dinner or lunch.
Exactly.
But to say that, the other thing obviously is that the fascia in your body likes you to move every 20 minutes, right? Or else it starts getting rigid. And that often is where we get all the tweaks and the pranks. And it can feel like those weird little muscle tightnesses. And so it's good to be a fidget if you're not going to get up every 20 minutes. So, you know, that's when it's quite good to be cooking while you're working, because it's that kind of like, you know, set an alarm so that every 20 minutes it goes off and you've got to go, or 15 minutes you have to go and check on the food. So you get up and you go in the stir, and then you come back, and then you sit back down, you're doing stuff, and then you have to get up again. And that can be a really good way of managing your time and getting that priority, still getting food done and getting your work done, but it also gets you moving enough, which can be quite useful. So that's the other way. If you don't want to do the, you know, drinking buckets of water to go to the toilet instead, a gazillion times a day.
Do need to drink more water, but that is really annoying. Focus.
I also wake up in the morning and just think, okay, what is it that is going to make me feel good about my day and myself and my progress? So, or in the negative, what's going to make me feel overwhelmed or stressed if I don't do it? So often I'll just go, okay, what is it that I really need to do today? And what's that? That'll be the minimum. And if it's only one thing and I get it done, it's like, sweet, done. And I find that really takes the pressure off, because I have things crowding into my mind, and if I don't deal with them, they just keep building up. But in some mornings I have to just deal with one particular thing because I've got a deadline, and it's usually because I've got the deadline coming up, so it's real. I actually really have to tackle that particular thing. But I find if I do that daily when I wake up, I don't get into the trap of being stuck with not enough time before the deadline, because it comes in, I'm giving it the space to come into my mind in the right time when I need to deal with something, so that I can actually deal with it properly before it's due. So that's pretty much how I tackle what my priority is for my day.
I find it's funny. I would say I can't do it if it's based on an anxiety or an overwhelm. Like, for me, that would make me jump too quickly into trying to produce the work, and then probably finding myself frustrated with trying to do it. So I go more for the intention of, how do I want to feel in whatever it is I need to do for today? Like, so what is it that I want to feel like while I'm doing it? And I try and spend the time cultivating my intention for how I want to feel during the activities that I've set myself for the day. And that often I find, especially when there's anxiety and a lot of stuff to do, it just helps me remove some of the really unnecessary things. And then actually I really can feel into what is essential. And it just gets me to the core of what I'm trying to produce. Rather than finding myself sometimes getting caught in the millions of things. And when I do I've got a million things on my head and I go out and I just kind of want to get on with it, I find that those are the days where I just am like lost in a maze of trying to produce stuff, and I get really frustrated with myself. So I think the intention is really important, but I've definitely found cultivating that positive feeling of me enjoying the work makes a huge difference to reducing anxiety.
Me too.
And then obviously, like you said, lists. So who doesn't love a good list? Like, is it just a type A thing? Are we type? We're not type. I used to be so type A. I'm confused anymore.
I think for me, I just have a terrible memory, and I just need to write things down in order for me to sort of remember that they're there. And that, of course, is always a satisfaction of sort of ticking it out. But I tried this approach where you would sort of do a beginning of the week brain dump. And so that everything that's in my head for that week, I think, oh gosh, this. And then when I can see it on the page, I'm able to sort of acknowledge which bits are actually not as important, pull out the bits that are, and then I try and sort of put them in the week, so to speak. I sort of give them a space during the week. And that tends to be quite good, because if I look at it from a week's perspective, it gives me a chance to then juggle things as life does its thing. You know, it might just be that I had a plan for Monday to be like one way, but I'm actually really exhausted because of something else, so I might shift it to Tuesday. But overall, the movement is, flexibility is there, but the week is still the commitment that I can commit to, and that helps me feel as though I've got a bit of structure but also a bit of play, so I'm not just beating myself with a stick with it.
Yeah, I also find breaking it into specific areas of life are quite useful, so that it becomes even smaller. So it's kind of like trying to make the lists as short as possible so they don't end up forever. And the other thing that I remember learning this quite a while ago, actually, I remember when I was building Amiga Movement, it was really useful to have this like wish list that basically what things that I initially would be like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and then I'd slowly start to realize that I clearly was never going to get to it, and so they became like wish list things that like every now and then something might happen towards them, but it became like the extra list. And then also I once had this this great incident where I was trying to do my UK tax return, and I had this problem with like doing the online tax return, and it wasn't letting me, it was trying to charge me tax for something that I had an exemption for, but it wouldn't let me put in the exemption. And I was just like, you know, when you start going mad, right? And I like reached out to all these accountants I know. All of them were like, no, I'm not going to help you. You have to become a client, then I'll have to do your entire tax return. I'm not going to help you with your work query. And so I just had that moment of being like, oh, like I can't solve this. I don't care. I'm going to forget about this, and the universe is going to work this out. Like, how on earth the universe is going to work out me filling out a form, right? But I just had enough, and I was like, I don't care. And so I completely abandoned it, just gave up. And no joke, about 2.5 weeks later, I get a message from an old client who's a private tax accountant, and you know, he wants to meet up for a coffee and just have a catch up and talk about stuff. And I went and met him, and just while I was chatting to him, I was like, oh, could you help me with this? And he was just like, yeah, sure, send me over the stuff. And literally, you know, within 2 like messages on Facebook Messenger, he solved my problem. I finished out the form and it's done, no tax charged.
Amazing.
You know, and it's amazing how like when sometimes we just go, I don't need to try and solve this. Like somehow the universe is going to provide a solution and work out getting this really boring task done. And it's amazing how those things can happen. So like, there's a little bit of that trust. I think sometimes we take too much control over our task list to kind of make ourselves feel like we are worthy or deserving in some way. And actually, you know, we don't need to do stuff.
Yeah, I like the idea of sort of feeling into it a bit more, because I was a lot more type A when I was working permanently, because I kind of had to be, and it was hard to sort of make that transition from I'm not in that corporate space anymore, but I can actually do things the way that work for me, and that kind of like, oh, so how do they work for me? I don't know yet because I haven't figured out another way. And one of the things I noticed was that I would very much get kind of attached to my day list. You know, I had to get that stuff done in that day because I'd given myself that task. But actually what I found is that sometimes if I fell into it, I felt like today was a really good day to do something completely different. You know, it might have been something where I actually know I'm going to go straight to the sketchbook today because I'm actually feeling like I want to be in there. And on another day, if I've set myself like a sketchbook day in the diary, it's like, I don't feel like it today. It's not actually I want to just get something else done, or I want to, I don't know, clean the basement, whatever. It's just that whenever you get an urge to do something, now I'm trying to let myself go with the urge, because so often that urge isn't there. So it's like, oh, I actually feel like doing that thing that I never want to do, but what I should just jump on it, and just do it. And I think that's the other thing which I never used to do before, because it was always a case of like, no, it's not on my list for today. I have to follow the list,
Allowing a bit more flow really is really what it comes down to, is allowing a bit more flow into your lists, and like letting things flow off your list. Like, it's that classic kind of, you can look at your list and be like, I've put it on the list, so I have to do it and it has to be done. And it's that thing of kind of looking at your list and going, I'm never getting to it. Is it really, like, do I really need it on my list at all? Or do I just need to like can it totally? Or is there a way where every time I look at this thing on my list that I always avoid, is that I can automate it and have it set up so I can kind of forget about it and only check in with it every 6 months? So it's that sense of kind of actually being honest with ourselves. It's a bit like decluttering your wardrobe, that thing of like, I know it's a beautiful top, but I haven't worn it for 3 years. What on earth is it doing here? It's that same way of us clearing out stuff that we're kind of holding on to, and actually just releasing and letting go of stuff so we can flow and enjoy like what really works for us.
And when we do, we're a lot more productive, because we're actually working with the energy that is right for that particular task. So I think I work like that now most of the time. I do have my lists, but I'm very flexible about them, and I work according to how I feel very much. And it's much more productive, because if I feel like writing, and I just, even if it's 6 o'clock in the morning, I just sit down and start writing. And I'll forget about my exercise routine, because if that's what I really feel like doing, and it's in my head and it's coming out, it's flowing, then I just get it done. And then I find that all the tasks, and it's the same with if I'm doing any study, there'll be times where I can't even look at it, and there'll be times that like, oh yeah, I really want to do that. And I'll shift other things out of the way, because if I'm really in the mode of doing that study, it just feels really productive. It's flowing easily, and it gets the job done well and quickly, and I feel good about it as I'm doing it, because it's coming naturally and simply. But when I try and force something because it's like I think I should do it, then it doesn't work very well. And so I have to let it go and go, okay, what is it I really want to do? And then it works. So it's more about giving enough space for that to happen.
I also think that sometimes when we really have to get stuff done, like definitely at the moment trying to get this course produced, I'm finding that there's a degree I can allow flow, but then I really just have to get it done. And so it's that intention, and it's taking that time to really cultivate my headspace and really being like, what do I really need to do to get myself into a place where when I sit down, I'm just gonna like flow and be like, and also I've given myself like a daily allocated time. So I'm just like, I just have to do it for this amount of time. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. And I need to do any of the things that get me into my best state of flow, so that then when I'm doing the work, I'm just in a flow state while I'm doing it. And, I'm really present to that's exactly what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying it. Even though I might be in some ways kind of feeling stressed and a bit like, oh, I've got to get it done, it's a deadline. Like it's that kind of trying to enjoy it. And so, maybe taking that bit of extra time to do some cooking or a little bit of cleaning, because it's just like giving me that little bit of extra grounding time to kind of be like, oh, look, I can finish something, and something can look complete. And then I can go and do my work and be like, oh yeah, and I can still have that sense of completion and it looking nice in the process, even if it's not finished. So it's trying to like bring in those elements that we are looking for, maybe when we still have to get stuff done and we're struggling to get ourselves through that list. I find that, we can cultivate a sense of flow, and we can cultivate prioritizing our work through present activities, and through those kind of activities that ground us and really bring us back into ourselves in the present moment, and stop us from the task list future-ness of is to come back to those activities that are whatever it is that grounds you. I definitely find cooking is a really grounding activity for me. Like doing stuff with my hands is really important, not just the feet, but really, tactile stuff. is really good way to kind of just stop. And that's obviously then again where, you know, you can say, well, doing a bit of cooking can be really good for grounding you if you're doing lots of mental stuff, as a balance in your day. So just understanding those key activities that can ground you if you're doing lots of mental work, or you're being really creative and your mind's kind of going off into a different space, like what brings you back into now when you start to feel that sense of frustration maybe, or you're starting to get a bit stuck, you know, is how can we stop and find those things that get us back into that present state so we can find a bit of flow. So, you know, it might be that you do something with your hand, or you go for a walk, or you stop and you do some meditation, or you have like a nice mindful cup of tea break. Hello, Jenny. Or maybe, you know, you go and do some mantra, or you just, you know, have a dance around the house, you know, whatever those things are that get you into that present state and that state of flow. I think are really important for helping. I mean, I know when I was a lawyer, for me, it was going and doing exercise on my lunch break. It was like so important for me as a midday, like, you know, to work a minimum of a 14-hour day, I had to have 45 minutes of like really pushing my body, just being like body, in order to like get out of all of that. And it's just whatever it is, you know. So having those little tricks of little habits.
I find music is really handy for that too. Putting on the right sort of music to either shift your mood if you're feeling frustrated, or you've got energy to burn, or you just want to calm down. If you've got the right sort of music, you know, okay, I'll just put that on, even if it's briefly. It can help you just to shift into the next thing, or refocus, or dispel frustration that starts to build up.
Or changing music, you know, I have certain music when I do writing that I have to listen to. And so like as soon as I put it on, I'm like, okay, and zone. And it's like it just takes you into that place as well. So it's like, you know, changing your music to put you in different zones. Like if you have certain associations, that can also be a really helpful way to get you in. And then the last thing, wow, we're on time, Adele. This is amazing. I think we've been doing really well with timing actually with all of these. But was food. So, and obviously we've been talking about food and making meals as part of it, but also understanding kind of what kind of meals suit us at what time of day in order to help us have our best energy so that we can focus. So we're not having like a really heavy meal that makes us feel really sluggish when our brain should be working at its best, or you're having plenty of food so your brain has plenty of glucose to churn out as you do loads of thinking stuff. Or if your work involves being physical, you know, kind of enough energy to get you through but not make you have a stitch while you're doing it. I've been known to do that a lot with Pilates. So and the other trick, because we already touched on the toilet trips, is the like, are you hungry or are you thirsty? So many of us snack, especially working from home, we snack rather than have a drink. And making sure that we're not eating food to substitute the fact that we're dehydrated. And a really good trick for that is to do like a food diary and just watch what you eat and drink for like a week. And often it can be really revealing as to when you're snacking as opposed to drinking enough water. And the key with hydration is that if you're dehydrated, you feel more tired, and so your brain will feel more sluggish and foggy. And so you're going to struggle doing your work. So, you know, they often say try and front load rehydrating your body when you get up in the morning, so that you know, you've had like hopefully your 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and your body's had that long at least of not drinking water, and so it becomes a bit more dehydrated. So just kind of replenishing yourself in the morning will also really help with that clear thinking in the morning and having more energy in the morning, so you feel more revitalized. But also noticing that when you get the afternoon slump, not jumping into coffee, but jumping into something more water rehydrating or an electrolyte drink or whatever, or a herbal tea, can be really good to help you with that kind of boost in the afternoon.
A short dose of exercise too can be good as a substitute for energizing. Also knowing your constitution. So if you know your Ayurvedic constitution, as in Kapha, Pitta or Vata, or the combination, then you can be much more in tune with what sort of food and how much and what timing of the day is the best time to have that food to balance your constitution. That's probably another topic, another day's topic.
It is quite a big topic. So, I mean, we just wanted to touch on it really in terms of like, obviously making sure you're not having things with too many additives and stuff like that, but you're really good with that kind of stuff and not too much processed food. In terms of like that just being more toxicity for your body to have to sit and digest, so it makes you feel more tired and groggish. So, you know, all of the things that we can do to be aware of what we're putting in our body that affects our clarity and our energy so that we can be productive and effective when we're at our best. And, you know, kind of knowing if you've had a heavy night of drinking that you probably aren't going to be thinking your best the following day. You might be a bit slower on getting stuff done. And then, you know, that priority shift and balancing all of that kind of, you know, when you can achieve certain goals. So just, yeah, kind of being aware of, you know, when we choose to have food or drink that is going to be more of a demand on our body to process.
And also having a savoury breakfast can be really helpful for having steady energy instead of having the sugar dump around 11. Or mid-morning, which then makes you want to have the coffee or the sugary top up, like chocolate or whatever it is you snack in your house. So I find that particularly in the colder months, so you're coming to the warmer months, but for us in the colder months, having a savoury breakfast is a really, really good fundamental, I find. Yeah. In summer, it's more appropriate to have a sweeter breakfast, so maybe light fruit and things like that. But for us down south, it's more the time for salty things. Yeah. It sets us up for the day.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just miss our macrobiotic kind of, you know, ricey, stodgy breakfast myself with miso soup.
That was good.
It was good, right? Hey.
That's pretty much what I have for breakfast. I have porridge in miso soup. That's my winter breakfast with a bit of nori ripped up and stuck in. It's really good. Yeah. So did you guys go on retreat effectively?
Yeah, so the retreat we had in Greece was very different. The place we worked at in Spain, he was a Ayurvedic chef, so he did lots of really lovely like kind of platters of food that you could kind of pick and choose from, and he would do, you know, different styles of food. But then in Greece we had a macrobiotic chef who was lovely but very strict. And he insisted that food had to be very plain and bland and not taste good. It's part of his.
So you didn't like the miso with the rice dodge?
Generally, I love miso. I love rice. I love kimchi. I love all of that. I think it was just that there's sort of layers of flavor that you can sometimes sort of add to these things, and it was very plain.
It was very.
And that was. It was also very plain. It was very little, so it was a bit like that was good.
Yeah, he was strict. He was strict. It was quite hard. Like, it was an interesting point he wanted to make about it not tasting good, about us not being drawn by our sense of taste when it came to food, and which.
I don't agree.
Yeah, I just struggle a little bit with that. Like, I've worked in lots of detox retreat places, and they've always been like, it's about learning to eat well and enjoy your food. Like, for most of us, food is something we really want to enjoy, and a lot of people with eating disorders really need to learn to enjoy food, and so making it not pleasurable. But I kind of get his point from a anti-commercial, rich, first world, like, we all have plenty, we need to learn to like be less full of our desires, I guess. It's kind of trying to teach us that. But
I find that when food tastes absolutely amazing, awesome, that's when it's actually really good for me. If it's not like that, it's not good for me. It doesn't matter what it is. But if it's tasting like, oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
And then if it stops being like that, it's like, okay, I've had enough. But
totally.
Not to say that I actually stop at that point usually, but no, I'm at least aware of it. So
but I think
if I'm eating well, it's like that.
Yeah. From an emotional point of view, that act of sort of nourishing your body and like giving yourself that love, joy is such a big part of that experience. And it's that sort of psychological, emotional, mindful, sitting with what's in front of you, enjoying the beauty of it, and actually enjoying the experience of kind of eating it, and then knowing you're nourishing your body. Like, it's all connected, it's all one thing. And I can't separate, doing good to yourself by some kind of deprivation concept, because I don't think that you need to deprive yourself.
I believe in, like, if it makes you feel good, then it's going to be good for you, right? Because it lifts your heart. If it makes your heart sing, then that's what's good for you. And like, it's just aligning to that. And I kind of get the point of let's all try and live like monks, but I'm not. And sometimes, and there are some people maybe who do need to learn that, but I think it being a strict rule was a little bit unnecessary as an emotional impact on people. But it was interesting. It was interesting. I think, like, it definitely made me eat less at the meals, and then I just would snack elsewhere, which doesn't really work, right? It produces the rebellious kid in me when someone puts in those kind of rules, because I'm just like, there's no way, I'm gonna go have fun elsewhere. Which is basically what happened. Loads of people ran off and went and got food elsewhere and would fill themselves up on other in restaurants and come back and then not really eat the food. So it was it was an interesting psychological experiment.
I think that's mostly what it's about, isn't it? It's more about self-awareness. Is how do you respond to food? What is it you actually need? How much do you actually need? Do you actually eat too much normally? And is it that these small meals are actually enough? Because often, I know for me, I do eat more than I need, and that isn't very much compared with a lot of people, but it's very easy for me to eat too much. And so when I go on those retreats where they make you only eat a small amount and do tons of yoga or whatever exercise, I actually get to a point where I'm like, oh yeah, this is how much I need, because I get that self-awareness back of exactly how much it is I need. And then I'm like, okay, that's enough now, because I'm in tune and I'm balanced. And that,
but I think it's also one of those things. It's also one of those things where you have to kind of know what you're signing up for, in a way that you're definitely a case of, right, I'm gonna partake in this experience because this is actually something I want to sort of explore this.
Yes.
And then you've got to be psychologically quite kind of prepared for that, because I think that was the only other thing that a lot of people weren't really quite prepared for that, and so it triggered a lot of different emotional.
I think the photos he sent of his food were not what it looks like. That's a lot more colourful. So it was a lesson, wasn't it? It was interesting, but not against miso and rice for breakfast. Definitely not against the diet in the slightest. In fact, it's funny, a lot of people have actually implemented parts of that diet since doing it. That's the interesting thing. So many people actually have used it more than what we've ever done in Spain, but in a tasty way.
Well, I was thinking of putting in one of the recipe cards as the miso soup. I have quite a big bowl. It's miso soup with some ginger, and I put the oat porridge into that. And then I'll put tahini on it if I feel like it's something extra, or some nori.
I've never tried it with oat porridge. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really good. It's actually delicious. Oh, I like it. It's like salted porridge, and it's so yummy.
Okay, so I'm going to get us going because Jenny is here and ready to move, and I'm just going to quickly do a stop and a restart.